Yeah.
Okay. Have you started already?
Yes, started.
Oh gosh. Too soon. Too soon.
Oh no.
I'm not quite ready, but good morning everyone again. Here we are. Amazing. Another week has passed just like this. And what news do I have? First of all, uh-oh, we haven't quite gotten our technical side together. Does that work? And is this working here, though? That's the question. That's everything. Everything's working. And actually, can you hear me? Am I a little too soft? See what people are saying. It's okay. Yeah, there it goes that way. I have another music stand here. I'll take that out. It's nice I have this movable chair. It's very great. So once again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you all are. I hope that where you are is safe. The world, of course, is trying to open up, and at the same time, within just half a week, actually, that's less than half a week, I would say, there have been more than 500,000 new infections, new cases reported. New hospitalizations, actually, is what it is. And over 50,000 fatalities. So we are not out of this. We're not even close to being out of this pandemic. Since last time, actually, it's 1 million, more than 1.5 million new hospitalizations in the world. The tragedy is continuing, at least domestically. In Portland, that our Department of Homeland Security has agreed to actually take their unit, the troops, out of Portland, and hopefully this chaotic, if it were not so actually serious, it would just be a circus, would be over, at least for the moment. Okay, before I go on to anything else, though, I would like to read something, if this works out in my, since I find myself to be technologically challenged somehow. I never thought I was in that sense, but it seems like I am, kind of. Okay, save for later. Let's see. Yes. This is John Lewis again. John Lewis, for my generation, for me, was an icon of sanity, of honesty, of moral rectitude, and he passed away, and it was just interred a day ago. And before he died, actually, let me see, I should do this. He actually wrote the following, which he asked to be published on the day of his funeral. And that was yesterday, July 30th. While my time here has now come to an end, I want you to know that in the last days and hours of my life, you inspired me. You filled me with hope about the next chapter of the great American story when you used your power to make a difference in our society. Millions of people, motivated simply by human compassion, laid down the burdens of division. Around the country and the world, you set aside race, class, age, language, and nationality to demand respect for human dignity. That is why I had to visit Black Lives Matter Plaza in Washington, though I was admitted to the hospital the following day. I just had to see and feel it for myself that after many years of silent witness, the truth is still marching on. Emmett Till was my George Floyd. He was my Rayshard Brooks, Sandra Bland, and Breonna Taylor. He was 14 when he was killed, and I was only 15 years old at the time. I will never ever forget the moment when it became so clear that he could easily have been me. In those days, fear constrained us like an imaginary prison, and troubling thoughts of potential brutality committed for no understandable reason were the bars. Though I was surrounded by two loving parents, plenty of brothers and sisters and cousins, their love could not protect me from the unholy oppression waiting just outside that family circle. Unchecked, unrestrained violence and government-sanctioned terror had the power to turn a simple stroll to the store for some Skittles or an innocent morning jog down a lonesome country road into a nightmare. If we are to survive as one unified nation, we must discover what so readily takes root in our hearts that could rob Mother Emanuel Church in South Carolina of her brightest and best, shoot unwitting concert-goers in Las Vegas, and choke to death the hopes and dreams of a gifted violinist like Elijah McClain. Like so many young people today, I was searching for a way out, or some might say a way in, and then I heard the voice of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on an old radio. He was talking about the philosophy and discipline of nonviolence. He said we are all complicit when we tolerate injustice. He said it is not enough to say it will get better by and by. He said each of us has a moral obligation to stand up, and speak out. When you see something that is not right, you must say something. You must do something. Democracy is not a state, it is an act, and each generation must do its part to help build what we call the beloved community, a nation and world society at peace with itself. Ordinary people with extraordinary vision can redeem the soul of America, and I will add the world, by getting in what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. Voting and participating in the democratic process are key. The vote is the most important nonviolent change agent you have in a democratic society. You must use it because it is not guaranteed you can lose it. You must also study and learn the lessons of history because humanity has been involved in the soul-wrenching existential struggle for a very long time. People on every continent have stood in your shoes through decades and centuries before you. The truth does not change, and that is why the answers worked out long ago can help you find solutions to the challenges of our time. Continue to build union between movements stretching across the globe because we must put away our willingness to profit from the exploitation of others. Though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. In my life, I have done all I can to demonstrate that the way of peace, the way of love and nonviolence is the more excellent way. Now it is your turn to let freedom ring. When historians pick up their pens to write the story of the 21st century, let them say that it was your generation who laid down the heavy burdens of hate at last, and that peace finally triumphed over violence, aggression, and war. So I say to you, walk with the wind, brothers and sisters, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide. Okay. He was a remarkable person. We must walk in his footsteps. And that is partly the reason for these live streams, that we gather together and we speak about the art which brings the world together rather than all the things which separate everyone. Okay, before I go on, and I promise that all this rant, etc., will not continue very long at all. I just want to cover a little bit of what I was supposed to cover last week, but I couldn't find my notes, I couldn't find my stuff, and I couldn't find my video or my audio recording. So let me put this somewhere else. Maybe put this here. Put this here. This here. Someday, probably after all of this pandemic, everything is over, we will get more professional. It'll be much too late, but that's okay. So let me get this here. Okay, now I have to, yeah. Okay, yes, good. Okay, just a few words, and I want to do this probably in each of our live streams about a composer who could have had a great career, who maybe had the beginnings of a great career, could be known as one of the very important composers, but whose life was cut short, or who did not have socially the opportunity to develop in a way which would allow posterity to, I would say, celebrate that person as the person should be celebrated. Now I come to Samuel Coleridge Taylor, who's a wonderful composer and an important composer for the clarinet because he wrote a very significant work, a quintet for clarinet and string quartet. Now, Coleridge Taylor, he was born in 1875, and his mother was an English woman, and his father, Dr. Daniel Peter Hughes Taylor, was a Creole from Sierra Leone. And Sierra Leone was an interesting place because his father actually, or I should say, no, not even his father, it was his grandfather, I would say, was a slave in the Americas who went over and fought for the British side in the Revolutionary War, and the British actually took those slaves and freed them and brought them to Sierra Leone, the new home away from it. That's where he grew up. He was a doctor. The Coleridge Taylor's father was a doctor, but could not actually become certified, could not find his work in England, and he returned to Sierra Leone. But Samuel Coleridge Taylor lived in London with his mother and her family. Taylor was quickly known as a prodigy and as a very skilled composer at a young age, and he was, let me see, I have to just make sure that I'm doing this in a rather good way, efficient way, although that's not efficient at all, what I'm just doing now. Because I must say, even though I do know his quintet, I did not know his career very well, and that's why I'm reading it now. He was a student of Charles Stanford in music. Stanford, who was known as the English Brahms. I mean, this is very kind of, it's not weird, but very odd way that people were named in history. So, Coleridge Taylor was named during his lifetime as the Black Mauler, for instance. All this we look at now and think this is nonsense, and in fact, in a certain sense, demeaning. Everyone should be known for what they are themselves, but this is history. And as John Lewis said, we must learn from history. We should learn what is good and what is not so good. Okay, so he studied with Charles Stanford, and he was very much helped by Edward Elgar. And I just want to, I won't say more about him. He died way too early, I will say. And he died of pneumonia, actually. And it seemed like because too much stress, it said here, whatever that means. It's when he was only 37 years old. That's kind of like Mozart. And he wrote many pieces, and he wrote wonderful violin sonata also, which I'm planning to transcribe for the clarinet. When that happens, I'll probably let all of you know. But I wanted to just play a little bit, just to show you what, how does this go back here? Oh, here we go. Uh-oh, something bad is going to happen now. But let me turn this on. See if I can do this. Okay, this should work. Let me try this again. Okay. This is a little bit of Coleridge Taylor's Ballad for Orchestra, Opus 33, and was one of the works which Elgar particularly praised. It's a really very, very wonderfully strong work. Let's. Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! I can't skip. trying to get rid of the ad, but it didn't work. Anyway, here we go. This is from 1898. It goes on for several more minutes, so I thought that we really don't have time to listen to the whole thing, but please do if you can. This is a wonderful piece, and it's among many wonderful pieces that he wrote. And for all the clarinetists who are listening and watching now, please try out the clarinet quintet. Actually, I should say a tiny bit about that piece, because that actually came about when Coleridge Taylor was still a student in London, and Joachim came with Mühlfeld and played the Brahms quintet. What was that? That's Coleridge Taylor commenting on what I'm saying. Yes. In any case, yeah. Yeah. Samuel Coleridge Taylor. It's right on the top. You can write it down. That makes sense. So anyway, so he heard it. He was impressed with the piece, but he actually wrote at that time that he thought he could write a work which would be original in a way that would, in a sense, would not be influenced by the Brahms quintet, because he understood that after that monumental piece, many composers would write pieces which would be, in a certain sense, similar. And he did, in many ways, succeed in writing a work which had its very own profile. So, once again, play it if you can. Great. All right. So, having said that, I actually move now to our topic at hand, and first I wanted to do once again. Here, take this. This is the book I was trying to find last week by Leonard Ratner. That's just so you see what it looks like. Can you see this? 1 second. I think that we have a backlog. What do you need? No, you're okay? Okay. Anyway, can we see this book here? That's right. Okay. As I mentioned, for me at least, this is one of the two most important books for understanding the classical music, the music of Mozart and Haydn, other composers such as Stamitz and Dittersdorf, etc., Kromer. And it has both very inspired, interesting information, and also things which are bits and pieces of things which we should actually know already. But one thing which he talked about or wrote about in this, which has become rather popular in musicological circles, was the notion of what he called topics. And I just say this a little bit. I think topics, well, I think it's an unfortunate title, the name, topics, because we have the topic of topics. I don't know if they should be maybe called templates. They were forms which composers used, which could come from earlier times, whatever, and they would be used both in a way, consciously, I would say, to evoke certain kinds of images, certain maybe a time and place, sometimes in the past, or they could be used simply as compositional devices, probably often without even composers' conscious knowledge. Now, these topics were things like dance forms, such as minuet, and especially like the saraband. The saraband is very interesting because as a form, this is for classic music, we find it throughout history, even in very recent times. So, for instance, well, I put this here for now. The saraband had a basic form, which is one. It emphasizes two, one, two, and one, two, and and in the actual classic saraband, 1, 2, 3, third measure, then 1, 2, and so it moves to 2 basically, with the third measure moving through. There are other dance forms. There's a waltz, there's a mazurka, and there's a Ländler. And they're also, like in general, all these topics and dance forms that. Here, one second. Oh, I'm not supposed to touch my face. Sorry. But at least I'm just home. But these dance forms have particular rhythmic, what you say, characters, and they actually define these forms. And this is important for us, and I'll explain that in a minute. But the Ländler, for instance, has a definite sense of downbeat. 1, 2, 3. The waltz, again, moves to 2, like the saraband in a certain way, but in a more kind of fluent way. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And all of these forms, dance forms, have to do with the actual dances themselves. I'm not going to try to demonstrate because I'll fall on my face right now, but maybe I'll practice, and next week I will. But there's the minuet, of course, but the other dance form I was going to say is the mazurka, and there you have a jump on 3, 1, and 1, and 1. Now, for performers, these very simple kinds of differences in rhythmic stress are very important because they actually contribute to the character of what we're playing. So in this sense, for performers, these topics that Ratner is talking about are things that we can actually pay attention to, I would say. I'm not going to say more about this. There's a lot more, and I'm just sort of scratching the surface, and there's a lot about also this that I take issue with, but that's also not for this live stream. But what I want to talk about are more, as I just began to mention last time, what I call our icons. These are gestures, basic gestures of expression, which from early times through the most recent music, they exist and they survive this way. And they are what are very, very important for performers, not only to understand, but to feel. And it's this feeling that I want to especially address now. Okay, in order to do this, the first thing I have to do is actually make a little detour again. So I'm probably not going to get through this at all, I must say. But I go to the piano, and I go back to Weber, because this is something I started with. And I was really last week speaking about how it's important when you're looking at Weber's music, and it's something that, of course, Carl Berman did not do enough, was actually to look at what he really composed and actually to look at the language of his composition. Okay, so first of all, I need to, well, how do I do this? One second. We become more casual in these live streams. I think maybe that's nice. If you don't like it, please let me know, and I will become less casual. But anyway, I have that. And I also have my coffee. Yes. Okay, so I go now to the piano, but I will take a clarinet with me. With this, what is this reed? God. Okay. And I go again to the first concerto, and just because right now there's at the very end there's also something that I think is important to change, and it is this: when we have here this ending, maybe I do this on the clarinet. Should I go back? Are we okay? I don't know. Our lighting today is not maybe as good as it should be. What do you think? Wow. This reed is so soft, it's an embarrassment. Okay. Anyway, I play it. Ah, I changed it already. I have to do that. Don't remember that. Forget. This is what is written on the page. Very simply that, right? Okay. So, that is, of course, now there's something actually quite wrong about that. And again, this is another place where if you take this and you bring it to your first year theory teacher or whatever, you'll be marked wrong about that. And it's simply because is that you get this concatenation of thirds going down, sort of cascading concatenation, we can call it. Can you hear me? Am I mumbling? It's okay, good. Okay. So there's a very simple solution, but again, you see, when Weber wrote, he very often, and this is not the only piece where we find things like that in his writing, that he wrote the basic form, but did not change perhaps what was necessary to actually create something which would work in a smooth and harmonically correct way, but perhaps just assumed that the composer would do that. Not the composer, the performer would do that. Wow, I'm something wrong. Anyway, so instead, oh, I'm in very, very bad shape. Instead of that, so that's, and after all this is bum, bum. And then going on, something like that, right? I'll wake up, it's okay. Just don't post that on Instagram or whatever. You do that, you will be in trouble. So anyway, that's a little bit. Now I go back though to Weber, and I go to this Berman edition to actually speak about what I really wanted to speak about last week, and that had to do with the issues of his notation. And he used, as I had mentioned, a very limited number of symbols to try to recapture what his father actually did when he performed the piece. Or maybe I should play another reed. What do you think? I'm not going to tell you what this reed is, but I'll try another one. Usually I take a new reed, it works better. should take another clarinet also. This is a big world here. Wow, this is like a brick. Well, I play it for the moment. Okay, so first in the first concerto, for instance, he actually added dotted rhythms where Weber wrote just straight 16th notes, let's say. So here, for instance, he wrote that way. I should probably play another reed, right? I should figure all this out before I actually have to play. That's right. Let me try this one. This was here, and I think I used this a long time ago. If this doesn't work, I'll try another mouthpiece. This is the beauty of these home live streams. You can just play any reed. I think this will work. So anyway, once again, Berman wrote like that. But of course Weber wrote just straight 16th notes. Now if we go to the second concerto, let me see if I can actually move from one piece to the other. We also have something similar. So for instance, we have this written here. This also doesn't work. I think I'm going to use another mouthpiece, but I'll do that later. So that's Berman's way. What did actually Weber write? And let's say the first movement. Yeah. How does it go? I forgot. Yeah, here. So actually this is more interesting even, because here Berman himself, he didn't write what we usually learned, which came from Berman's student, whose name was Schreinecke, which was this. And then, of course, what Berman wrote was more close to what Weber actually wrote, because here Weber writes, or wrote, I should say, that way. But what he did was he put a slur, and then on the C, he put a dot. That way. And that was translated, or I should say corrupted even further, by Schreinecke. Now, why am I pointing all of this out in my clumsy way? Because what Carl Berman must have remembered, and these are just a couple examples of many parts. I'm not going to go through the whole piece like that, showing all of them, but you can find them once I actually explain what he's trying to do. Carl Berman remembered his father playing with a particular kind of expression. And that expression is something which is actually very important for us. Because nowadays, in classical music training, let's say, what is very often emphasized is evenness. You have to play, we play with the metronome, of course, and we play this, and we play make sure that the eighth notes are the same length, everything the same length. But musical expression does not always work that way. And that doesn't mean that there's no virtue in evenness. There's a definite virtue in that. But there's a bigger virtue in understanding what you're doing. And this is what I want to come to. And what Karl Berman remembered of his father was when his father had an important note, most likely he held it longer. Because that note, just like I say that note, I don't say that note. That note is the note that communicated expression to his audience. So if we have this, there are different ways to play, but all of them have to involve that D having the emotion of this passage. So, here Berman tried to emphasize that by de-emphasizing the C, putting a dot there. And you'll see in the Berman edition many kinds of dots which have that kind of function. So those dots do not mean that you play short notes. Those dots do not mean that they are somehow accented or something like that. No, they are just kind of notes that perhaps you sweep under the rug a little bit, if you have one, of course. And those dots were translated by Schreinecke into dotted rhythms, for instance. So we have here, which, well, and this figure itself is in a way an icon. And let's look onward, and we go to Brahms. And we have this. We don't have that, of course, but see, that sort of double sense of appoggiatura always had particular emotional quality. Now, as performers, we can find that. Okay, now I go on and actually speak about actually performing these gestures. And when we do that, we actually are like actors. We must be actors. We must have a sense of theater, or we can say a sense of mime, which is, of course, theater without words. So let's say this gesture, again, go back to Weber. Something like that. Let's say we mime it. Something of that sort. Okay? We can speak it also. Now I play for you this melody. Yeah. Okay. Now what do we do on our instrument when we do this? Now let's go back to when I was talking about technique. And there, I keep putting this up and down. Let's keep this clarinet on the side. I have the sponge again. Now this sponge, remember how you feel that you have this, you have this pressure of the sponge. This pressure also creates expression. So here, even there, I don't play this way, but I feel that note with pressure here. And I feel the D with pressure. And then there's a release of pressure. There, again, there's pressure I feel. And of course, all these notes are appoggiaturas. And it's my favorite Italian word because as it comes from this feeling of pressure, feeling of leaning against. So we do not lean in a kind of I would say Cartesian way, as Descartes said, I think because I am. No, I act because I am. I am because I am. Physical and mental actually are the same. And I believe when we are playing music, for instance, which is a physical activity itself, of course, we have to feel expression in the way the fingers move, and because the fingers move in a way, also the embouchure moves in a particular way, and the body moves, the air moves. So if I'm playing, I feel this way. And again, we go back to the very first talk where I mentioned the great pianist Sviatoslav Richter, who said he plays with his feet. So here too, I'm sitting down. Normally I'd stand up, but I think it's better this way for the video. But I feel my feet with that as well. And I will speak about this more because also this has a lot to do with playing with great technical security as well. And here we find a kind of confluence between what is technical and what is musical. Because the technique is simply the physical expression of what we need to communicate musically. So once again, even there, here, I end up doing that. Now, look what Weber does here. And here, Weber actually writes the dotted rhythm. Now, why is that actually important? Because what Weber has done in a very operatic way is he has created a contrast. It's a contrast of emotion. It's a contrast also of style. And now, I'm going to jump back and forth a lot here. Now, I go back to Ratner. This is our friend Leonard over there with the book, Classic Music. Because one of the most important things that he actually describes and talks about is how composers and musicians understood the difference between, and it's more complicated than this, but I would say in a very simple way, what is high style music and popular style. Now, high style, of course, could be the fugue. It could be this learned forms of music this way. Could be also music of the church. Could be music in the classical period, which would be old-fashioned, perhaps. And what you have going on after the popular style could be like dance music. It's kind of nice little ditties, folk songs, things like that. So here, we first vary this way. This one is totally different. So, the actual injustice which Schreinecke did, which Berman was trying not to do perhaps, was to actually make the two the same. So then we have and we have a nice little piece, but it's not so interesting. Other pieces perhaps are much more. But in fact, as Weber wrote, this little concerto of ours is rather interesting and actually has this wonderful operatic element of contrast. Is there something you need? Oh, okay. What am I doing? Something wrong. So I'm not speaking, right? Okay. Well, if I'm not speaking, I probably do mumble because I'm just talking to myself. It's a part of it. Yes, I talk to you, but you can hear me talking to my co-worker there. Okay, now I forgot what I was going to say even. That's right. Okay, so this is wonderful operatic sense. Now going on to the next part, we have in there, as Weber wrote, he already creates a contrast here. Because first, we have something which is very, as he said, grandioso. It's a little kind of operatically pompous. And of course, again, would be something like that. Because I'm so important. It's not like I am so important. No, I'm so important. I'm. And then here, you have the peanut gallery going, no, you're not. So again, we have this great comic operatic moment here, which is clear if you understand the way Weber wrote himself, if you understand not only his notation, which was very simple, but behind the notation, what I call the iconic gestures of music. Okay, I go on. Let's go back to the first concerto, where again we have these dotted rhythms. And once again, of course, what would make sense is that the first note, the G moving down, is important. This is what I do now. Then, yeah. But it's very possible that this is 1870 when Berman was doing this, and then later on, beginning of the 20th century, I imagine, I actually don't really know, when Schreinecke put out his edition, and Breitkopf moved to that edition of Schreinecke. Of course, music had become more complex in a way, and I'm always simplifying, but because of that, the idea of evenness perhaps became more important. And with that in mind, these people started writing uneven rhythms to counteract this sense that we must play evenly. This always happens now, and I think it's always this kind of scam that we get. Let's yeah. Should turn off our home phone somehow. I turn off the cell phone. Okay, so I think that now I move from Weber, but I still want to have this sense of physical sense of what expression is and how we feel one note this way and one that way. And sometimes, of course, technically on an instrument like the clarinet, on wind instruments in general, we have to do the opposite, because if we're playing, for instance, this way, for instance, the F that we play, the hand opens. Well, it's a little more complicated because we still have the thumb. So this thumb, can you actually see what I'm doing? Is that, you can see? No? Should I, what should I do? Stand up? Yeah? It's okay. Because the important thing is to see my hands for this.
Okay.
Okay? You've got it? So, you see if I'm playing here, so that works. But I have to say also that it's your whole body which has to participate in this phrase. So as I mentioned, the feet, I'm standing up, so my feet go this way, my body goes up, the air pushes, the tongue even has more of this, and this hand squeezes, and the embouchure stretches, and this hand, this right hand, which is doing nothing in a certain way, because there, we can sort of even play without the hand, participates though by feeling the music this way. And remember a rubber band from the technique. This is where you can see how everything actually fits together. Works also that way. So we feel the rhythm and this gesture. So I'm squeezing and lifting this way. This is basically, I'm acting the music out. Now I go back to here that I was mentioning. So here we have to actually feel with a lift. I like to call it myself an anti-squeeze, because it's that way, but the muscles which are controlling that are doing as if they're squeezing, but they're actually going the other way. And how do I play this really? I did one squeeze, lift. Da, 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 da. Oops. That's okay. Poor clarinet. Yeah. Now the thumb, the left thumb, that actually squeezes along with it. You could do, and there where everything is open, and I could play, But here, what's interesting is that the right hand thumb actually works that way. Can you see it all? Not at all? Oh, I'm sorry. Should I do this again?
No. Everything. No, just only last one.
Oh, which is the last one? The all of this business?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe you have to go back farther.
No, this is.
Yeah. So I could do that. It's
Sorry.
today is quite something. Anyway. Actually, with this you can see my this is my, once again, my harmonic Bible. I keep it by my side very, very often. So here, yeah, I'll be a little more controlled also this way. So I open everything here. I do, but this thumb here, and this is works actually to move the clarinet there. So, okay, what should I do now? This is for mentioning the basic physical nature of expression. Now I want to go through a couple more of what I call these icons of expression. And one is, which I mentioned actually last week very much, is this falling, which is usually sixth, but it can be a fourth, whatever. That that way, and we see this is a gesture which Mozart was particularly drawn to, but not only Mozart, because as I mentioned, basically all composers use this, and they use this always, I would say, in the same or similar way. And when we look at a figure like that, we should see that this is an icon. Yeah. So, if we have here in Spohr, that starts with this icon. So, what does that mean in terms of the way we play? It's not simply, but this is the icon in the beginning. Next one too. Etc., etc., etc. Going that way. It's I showed in the concertino. There's so many of the Mozart concerto last time how he develops that idea until in the last movement it becomes sort of central as the culmination before the reprise of each section of this kind of rondo form, or we could say extended rondo or sonata rondo form, whatever. Just very unusual form. I actually would like to call that the form of that movement a mirror form in as a little gesture towards Bartók, actually, whose forms were often similar to the last movement, the finale of the Mozart Clarinet Concerto. Anyway, this gesture is always there and always very similar. Now, we go to another gesture, and there we have this. The third, minor third to the major third. Yeah. And we see this in many pieces, and I'm always go to clarinet music, basically. let's look at the Poulenc Sonata, for instance. In that first movement, when we have this going, and then we have here, that's sorry, no, we have that. So with here, we have that there. Then the next one, what am I doing? No. Wow. Yeah, it's because I'm looking at the music. I've never done this with music for years. That's what it is. Gosh. Okay. Anyway, these gestures, that way, or this one, this is you want me to button my button, right? You see, I just bear everything on this live stream. Impossible. Today is really impossible. Anyway, this gesture, which we see especially in Schoenberg's Pierrot Lunaire, in the one of them called Nacht, number 9, where we have here. Throughout, which then Berg actually quotes in his 3 pieces. No, what are they? They're not 3 pieces, they're 4 pieces. And they are opus 5. Okay, this is... Someone should make a list of all the mistakes I'm making today. You can compile them and publish them. It's okay. This is the Neidich mistakes. Anyway, okay, so this is another kind of gesture. And then why do I list this gesture also? Because, you see, as we move to this, it has a particular kind of expression. And this particular kind of expression we should see. Because when composers write, and I believe whether it's conscious or unconscious, whatever, they have this in mind. Let's see. You see. So there, again, this expression always involves a kind of tension and release. So we have that, or that's a... I can't play, you see? Another mistake. No, that's wrong. Yeah, it's a... Because it's all half steps. What can you do? It's just half steps among friends. That's right. Oh, God. I'm really... Okay, so this is this feeling, physical feeling of expression that we have. And this feeling of expression we have in all music, whether it is Western classical music, whether it is jazz, whether it is pop music, whether it is even kind of rap, which is monotonic, but has the sense of punctuation of the words. Whether it is different kinds of folk music throughout the world, this always is present and involves these gestures of tension and release. There we go. Yeah. Okay, now I want to play some things for you now. So I come back here, and I need to see what time it is. Okay, it's already 11:19. So what I need to do is just play very small snippets of some stuff, because I did play before some folk music from around the world, and I want to do that again, just so you can be reminded once again. And I should. There's so much here I found which was wonderful, but what I want to do is, first of all, not that one. What is this here? Yeah, I think this is what I want to play right for you now. This is an Azerbaijan clarinetist. Oh, let me do this. I forgot. Hold it. Once again, let me get this back. Oh, because this is turned off now. That's why. Sorry. Okay. Okay, now I think it should work. So we always go back to this. Okay, gets I'm sorry. Gets more and more involved, more interesting, but I get a little bit of an impression of this. This is, again, Azerbaijan folk clan. Oh, come on, stop. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, well, where did that come from? That's funny. Okay, I move on a little bit here, and I'm not going to play. Oh, I think this is coming from. This is from there.
Oh, so then can you stop that? Turn off.
Turn this off.
Yeah. Can you turn off? Oh, no.
Yeah, somehow we're getting the recording as well. Sorry. I just here going to play a little bit of this is Piri, Korean. Okay? No? Okay. So again, a little bit. This is Korean traditional music. That's oboe piri. That's all that. And again, we feel how you have this tension in the note, these releases, tension. Yeah. And the final thing, there's more, but I think I will wait till the next one to actually continue with this. But I go to shakuhachi in Japan. Now, what I find in a way so interesting and remarkable about Japanese culture, you know, is how so many elements of our life in the Japanese culture are kind of refined down to their very essence. And the music that we hear, this with shakuhachi, it's really, I think, the sense of expressivity without the extraneous elements of, let's say, a pretty melody or a perky rhythm or something like that. But it's just the essence, it's the expression, it's this emotion which is just sort of refined, squeezed down to its the very, very initial elements. Okay, so here I go here. Oh no! YouTube is so awful. Okay, well, I think that means, in fact, we have to stop with that. Okay, so here we have from different parts of the world. This is very different kinds of music, but they all have this essential element of expression, this tension, this release, and this is probably the basic icon of expression. Okay, now I think I will actually play for you. Oh, let's go back to it. I think I play this instrument, but I'm not sure. Okay, now shall I sit down or stand up? What do you think? What is better?
Up to you.
What's that? Up to me? Yeah, maybe I just. This I will use music for this, and I'm going to play 3 pieces for you. I was going to play more, but I think I'll play just these 3. And I will start with the Penderecki Prelude. Now, why am I playing these? Because these 3 works involve the sort of expressive icons in very, very obvious, and I would say and in their own way, powerful way. Well, Penderecki, I always found him a fascinating composer. His later music I'm less interested in than the earlier music, but the earlier music, he took things which were in a certain way found and put them together, whether they were effects or sonic images, whatever, put them together to create actually emotional works. And there's his crowning achievement, of course, is the Passion According to Saint Luke, that is, which is in its own way a remarkable piece. Now, later on, and in this prelude, you have this. He took actually standard gestures, and these gestures in this piece were the two, I would say, very, very basic, iconic gestures in classical music. One is the half step. So you have here, in this figure, for instance, that gesture you have. So we have that here. And then we have the minor thirds as I mentioned, with his minor third to major third going. So we have a minor third, then plus the half step. Here is that way. But then the actual falling minor third there is a gesture which finds itself in so many different kinds of music in so many different ways, but every way has kind of significance. So even all of that, that call augmented second, minor third, whatever you want to call it, again creates a special kind of expression, a special kind of emotion. So here, Penderecki is using those and constructing out of these, which I would say very much stock elements, in a way, this minor third and this half step, he constructs this piece. Okay, yeah, I'm speaking too much. Then, the next piece, which again involves an expressive icon, the psi motif. It comes from the first movement of Edison Denisov's Sonata for Solo Clarinet, 1971, that he actually wrote it. I have to say, each of these three pieces, I, in a certain way, have a special relationship with. And this one in particular, because I was very close to Denisov here, and he gave me one of his manuscripts of it. This is it, just so you can see what it is. So, in here, he uses quarter tones. Those quarter tones create, in a sense, a heightened expression, because this whole movement is made up of this psi motive, which is a falling half step. And then he goes in between. So we have in between those two here, and goes throughout the piece. I have to say, for the clarinetists in the listening here, it's a reason why these quarter tones have to be in tune. Okay. And once we hear clearly, we can feel that quarter tones actually have a very distinct life. So if we play, and then there, we could hear them exactly what they are. So hopefully I'll play them more or less in tune. Although I have to say, nobody plays exactly in tune. But it's something we strive for. So here's the first movement. And the final piece, let me see if this works. It's actually an oboe solo, but Isang Yun agreed for it to be played on the clarinet. This is Piri, and we heard the Piri in that bit of YouTube recording that I had there. And I need cork grease. I have it. So everything gets stuck. Have my coffee also. Very difficult for me to play without coffee. Okay, again, this is Piri, and the remarkable nature of this piece has to do with the way he shapes long notes to, just like the Piri itself, or the shakuhachi there, creates nuance and emotion inside one note. So this is actually taking these gestures and putting them inside one note, so we have just the expression. And with that, thank you once again for bearing with me. Be well, be safe, and I hope to see you next week. Okay, thank you.